Well, hey there, folks. Welcome back to another video. My name is Jake Forbes, and I am once again here at the Neuse River Valley Model Railroad Club in Raleigh, North Carolina for another product review and demo. Now, today is going to be a little different. This is a big one. This is one that I've been wanting to make for over a year now, ever since these models came out. And I do say models, not model, because today we're going to be taking a look at not one, not two, but 6 different models. And you might be wondering yourself, Jake, what could you possibly be cramming 6 models into one video for? Well, I am, because they all kind of go together. And my shirt that I'm wearing is a little bit of a hint. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Fox Valley models by Scale Trains, Norfolk and Western Class J 484s. This particular one we're going to be looking at is the DCC sound-equipped version of Norfolk and Western, the famous Norfolk and Western number 611. This is the in-service version. A lot of the reviews you see online are of the excursion version, the Spirit of Roanoke version, the modern-day version. But I model the 1950s, so it doesn't make really much sense for me to have the modern excursion version. And the modern versions aren't right. They don't have, the detailing on those isn't quite right to how it is today. We'll get into that when we get into the detail section. But on top of that, we're also going to be looking at the Fox Valley models by Scale Trains, yet again. Norfolk and Western Powhatan Arrow coaches that were released to go with the J. Both of these models are former MTH toolings. In I think 2019, Scale Trains bought all the MTH HO toolings and are slowly starting to release stuff with it now. And this was the first of those products. Well, not the first. They had some reefers come out first, but typically these are the first passenger cars they're doing, and they're the first steam locomotive that Scale Trains has ever done. And this is where we start to get into some of the complications. As much as I'd like to sit up here and tell you that this is one of the best models I've ever purchased, it is a 10 out of 10. It is perfect in every way. I can't do that. I can't do that in good faith, which sucks, because I really wanted this to be perfect, right? I'm a massive fan of the Norfolk and Western. I'm an even bigger fan of the 611. It's what got me into trains, seeing it in the museum in Roanoke as a kid, and then later on in life, when I was a bit older, getting to ride behind it. I've blown the whistle. I've gone everywhere this engine has been to see it run in my years. So I really wanted this to be perfect, and unfortunately, it hasn't been perfect. I've had to return this model 3 times, and we'll talk about why a little later on before we get into the running session. But yeah. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Locomotive and the complete set of Powhatan Arrow passenger cars. We're going to talk about the good, we're going to talk about the bad, and we're going to delve into the ugly that comes with these models. But before we can do any of that, we got to get these things out of the box. So I'm going to open up the engine and one of the passenger cars. In the interest of time, I have a feeling this video is going to be long enough as is. So we're going to go ahead and open up the engine and just one of the passenger cars. So let's get started. First thing you got is your manual. It's got function list, adding a decoder if you bought the DCC ready version. This one's equipped with, this is the sound version with Loc Sound V5. And then I'm going to take away the black foam here to reveal the model, locomotive, and tender. Over here we have a couple of different things, including a nut driver to get the side rods off, and another driving wheel. This is one without traction tires. The one on the model comes fitted with traction tires, and they even send you some extra traction tires in the box if you need new ones. So let's go ahead and take some stuff out of the block of ice packaging, starting with the tender. Now, here it is. Now, something I will say about this that is very nice about both the Locomotive and tender, and like I said, we're going to take a bit of a closer look later in the video at both of these, but it's all die-cast. It's all die-cast metal, which is very good. Something that model railroaders will tell you is the heavier a model is, the more realistic it feels. That's something somebody said in a YouTube video I watched. I've heard the same sentiment from some other people I've met in real life. And I can safely say that is at least partially true. I will say that. All right. Now for the Locomotive. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen. In all her glory, the Queen of Steam herself, Norfolk and Western number 611. We're going to take, I'm going to set it aside for now. We're going to take a much, much, much closer look at both this and the tender in a minute here. But for now, put this back, at least somewhat in an organized place. Let's get the passenger car out. We're going to be opening up, which one is this? This is a N&W P3 56 seat coach. This is the class P3. This is just a standard coach. Get this guy out of the box. And like I said, all the coaches come in the same packaging. Comes with manual, and the manual is specific to the class of coach. There are 4 different classes of coaches on this train. So, yeah. And it's got an exploded parts diagram on the inside. And now for the car itself. And here it is. Once again, it looks absolutely gorgeous. These are beautiful models. So let's go ahead and take a bit of a closer look. Let's put them onto the detail track, and we'll take a closer look at these models. But first, we got to go over the history of the Class J's and the Powhatan Arrow. That's coming up right now. Norfolk and Western Class J number 611 was completed on May 29, 1950 at the Roanoke Shops in Roanoke, Virginia. She was the first and the third and final batch of Class J locomotives. 611 was part of an elite group of locomotive, often considered to be the finest passenger locomotives ever built. The J's had several modern features like roller bearings on all axles and rods, mechanical lubricators, and stokers. Thanks to the efforts of Bob and Graham Clater, O. Winston Link, and the city of Roanoke, in 1959, the 611 was saved from scrap and was donated by the N&W to the city of Roanoke for display in their new transportation museum located in Wasena Park. In 1981, Bob Clater, now president of the N&W and later Norfolk Southern, announced that the 611 would be brought out of retirement for use in the company's steam program. She ran in the steam program from 1982 to 1994, when the program was canceled. She was returned to Roanoke for display at the museum, now located at the old Norfolk and Western Freight Station in downtown Roanoke. She would wait there for 20 years for the opportunity to run again. That opportunity came in 2015 when she was brought back to life once more and dubbed the Spirit of Roanoke. Today, the 611 remains in operation and recently completed a series of fall foliage excursions on the Buckingham Branch Railroad. To learn more about the 611 and to support her continued operation, please visit the Virginia Museum of Transportation website and consider making a donation. The Powhatan Arrow was inaugurated in 1946 as the N&W's new premier streamlined passenger train. Trains number 25 and 26 ran from Norfolk, Virginia to Cincinnati, Ohio daily, completing a 676-mile journey in 15 hours and 45 minutes. The railroad ordered new passenger cars from Pullman for the train in 1946, but due to the backup from the war, the new cars couldn't be delivered right away. The railroad, excited to capitalize on the post-war boom in passenger traffic, ran the new service with older rolling stock until the new cars were delivered in 1949. The Arrow at its prime was a 7-car all-coach train with a dining car and a tavern lounge observation car. Due to a sharp decrease in passenger traffic experienced by all railroads in the late 1950s and 60s, the service was downgraded over the years. The observation car was removed in 1955, and head-end equipment like RAA cars, railway post office cars, and baggage cars were added around the same time. The Arrow itself would later be discontinued in 1969. And here she is in the workshop, so we can get a closer look at her individual parts and specs. Now, before we get into that, though, I do have to mention something. During this initial release, Scale Trains released 3 different versions of this model. You have the early as-built, covering some of the earlier J's, particularly road numbers offered were 600 and 602. Then you had the later as-built, which is what this is. The road numbers they offered for that were 611 and 613. And then you have the excursion version, which is 611 as it appears now. And there are some differences in the detailing on each model, or each version, and we are going to talk about that as we go down the locomotive. But that's something to keep in mind, and I'll point out those differences when we get to them. All right, now, let's get into the individual details. Starting up front, you have the iconic bullet nose that the Class J's are just famous for. Up top, you've got 2 LED illuminated classification lights on either side of the locomotive. You can see the start of the shrouding down the boiler. Got your LED headlight right here in the center with illuminated number boards on either side. Got your steps and handrail grab iron going up the steps. And then you've got another grab iron along the bullet nose here. Now, moving down the steps, we have the air pump louvers. Now, this is the first difference between the late as-built J's and the early as-built J's that Scale Trains are offering. If you buy number 600 or 602, they will not have the air pump louvers, where if you buy a 611 or 613, it will. Now, while this is correct, in theory, for what I'm trying to model as a mid-1950s modeler, 611, this is not 611 in its as-built state because it has the air pump louvers. If you look back at the history section when we showed the 611's builder's photos, you'll notice that the air pump louvers aren't there. That's because these were added sometime in the early 1950s to all 14 J's. Now, is this a big deal? To me, not really, because the time frame I go for, it would have the air pump, the louvers on it, that you see here. But, technically speaking, because these are here, this is not 611 in its as-built condition. Just, not really an issue, but just something that I noticed and figured I'd point out. As we continue down, you've got your coupler cut bar here. You've got some steps on both sides. And then we get to the pilot. So, as you can see here, got a bit of an indentation. This is a panel that swings open to reveal the air brake lines between going to the 611 on the front. And then, just like on the real thing, if you push, you got a plate here, and if you push it out, it reveals a front coupler that swings out, just like on the real thing. Now, this is an area where I think Scale Trains could have included in the box a separate coupler that actually functions. What you see here is just a dummy coupler. It won't couple to anything. So if you wanted to double head the engine or do freight ops with it, like in the later 1950s, you can't really do that with this coupler you have on it. Now, is that the end of the world? Not really. I can't imagine people really ever doing much switching with these models. But it is something that Broadway Limited includes on their J's and their Class A's, as well as I think their C&O J3s. Anything that has a streamlined pilot with a swing out coupler, they include in the box a coupler you can install if you want to double head the engine. Moving down the side of a locomotive, we're going to start out on the fireman side and then look at the engineer side. You get a better look at those teardrop classification lights up top. Got your grab iron that runs down the entire length of the boiler. Legible Roanoke Shop Builders plates underneath that. You've got your running board with the Tuscan red stripe going down the side. And then beneath that, you've got your air pumps right in here. And your bell is right here. Now, this is the next difference between the early and late versions of the J that scale trains are offering. The early versions have the bell mounted up top on top of the boiler right about here. The late versions have the bell mounted here. That is prototypical, that is correct, but that is something to know if you're wondering what the differences are. Next to that is actually our next difference between the early and late version, which is the pilot wheels. You'll notice here, this one has solid pilot wheels. That is correct. The last batch of J's were built with solid pilot wheels. And the earlier J's from the first two batches had spoked pilot wheels from the factory. That's correct. But it is another difference to point out. Something that is also worth pointing out is that all 14 J's were eventually got the solid pilot wheels. So that's something in future releases that Scale Trains could include is another set of pilot wheels, so you could swap them out with the spoked or non-spoked, however you like. Next to that, you've got your cylinder with a Class J on it. And then you got the start of the valve gear. Above that, though, you do have your Nathan mechanical lubricator modeled right there. And then you've got the valve gear. The valve gear on this model is beautiful to watch. It is one of the best features of it. It's one of the only models I've seen that gets the movement of Baker valve gear right, visually speaking, with the eccentric rod. Usually eccentric rod is pretty stiff on models. This one, they got it. It looks really good in motion, and you'll get to see it in motion. But right here, you've got your crosshead, and that is the next difference between the early and late J's. The first batch of J's, so 600 through 604, had multi-bearing crossheads, and then the other two batches, 605 through 613, they had these alligator-style crossheads. Now, that is represented properly on the 600 and 602 that came out last year. Earlier this year, Scale Trains announced another run of J's, and the early as-built version on those are of the second batch of J's. So those have alligator crossheads and not the multi-bearing. Again, perfectly right. A good thing they got that right. It shows attention to detail, but it is something to notice if you're looking for differences. Continuing down the side of the boiler, we have some steps right here that give the crew access to the sand domes up top. You got your Tuscan red stripe with yellow lining continuing down the side, and you have 611 in crisp lettering right here. You also will notice that the stripe dips a little bit as it gets to the firebox. Once again, that is correct. That is one of the telltale signs if you can't see the wheels on a K2, which also had the streamlining. The lining on that continued in a straight line, whereas the J's had it sort of go down like that at the firebox. So if you can't see the wheels and you're trying to identify the difference between a K2 and a J, that's one way to do it. Now we've got the firebox and cab area. So you've got the Tuscan red stripe continuing down. You've got that little swoop that I told you about a second ago. You've got some riveting here for the streamlining. Got some more down here. Got some steps going up to the running board. And then you got another set of steps going to the top of the boiler. You also got your grab iron coming to an end right here at the cab. And as we head over to the cab, you have the orange windows, orange lining on the windows. You got a grab iron above the window, and then you got your cab roof. If you buy the Spirit of Roanoke version, it'll say Spirit of Roanoke under the cab window right there. Beneath that, you've got one of your pumps for your feed water heater system. I believe that is the hot water pump, but I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. And then you've got some grab irons on the back of the cab. Continuing here at the drawbar, you can see the gap between the engine and tender. It is a bit long for HO scale, but that is due to the design of this drawbar. And we're going to get into that drawbar. Don't you worry. We're going to talk about that drawbar design. Ooh, we're going to talk about that. Next up, we've got your water hoses between the engine and tender right here. And then you've got some stuff for the tender. Now we're going to actually unhook the engine from the tender and take a look inside the cab. I've actually turned the lights down so we can get a good look at the inside of the cab. As you can see, we're looking at the engineer's side of the cab. You can see the brake stand, various different gauges and whatnot in there. You can also see butterfly doors for the firebox and model molding for the stoker. This is one of the better looking cabs I've seen in HO scale. It does get the interior color of the cab right, which is that dark green that you see. You also got around the cab, you've got these cab curtains, two on the side and then one up top. That is actually a difference between this version and the modern Excursion version. The Excursion version actually has green cab curtains. I couldn't tell you why. I'm pretty sure the real thing the prototype has that, but that just is one of the differences. Looking at the fireman's side of the cab now, we can see more hand-painted gauges and whatnot, and you can almost make out where the engineer or the fireman cab figure would sit. And that's another difference between this and the earlier run of the MTH models, back when these toolings were still being produced under MTH. They had cab figures. They had cab figures in the cab, and for some reason, Scale Trains didn't include it on this release. I don't know why. It's a pretty easy mod you can do yourself, and I probably will at some point add cab figures to this because I like having my cabs be populated. But it's just something that they didn't include. It's not a bad thing, I would say. It doesn't affect the running ability of the model in any way, shape, or form. It's just something that would have been nice to have, I think, for what you pay. But that's not the end of the world. Looking down the engineer side of the locomotive now, it's detail-wise, it's more or less the same, except you've got your throttle assembly going from the cab down to the front right here, as per the prototype and any locomotive equipped with a front-end throttle. Looking at the trailing truck on the engineer side, you see on the back wheel here it says Timken, just like on all the other ones. But if you look at this one right here, this journal box, it doesn't really say anything. It's got a bit of a weird molding to it. That's because this is the speedometer. This is where the speedometer was on all the J's. And I think it's a really neat feature that they molded onto the trailing truck. Getting a bird's eye view of the locomotive now, you can see the smokestack right up there at the front. Now, this locomotive does come equipped with a smoke unit, and if you want to add smoke fluid to it, just put a few drops directly down the stack. Don't have to include much, just a few drops will do. As we continue down the top, you can see right here, this is where the sand dome is under the shrouding, but you can see the hatches to access the sand dome. Got your safety valves in there, and then moving back, you have the whistle embedded in the streamlining, just like on the real deal. Then on the cab roof, you've got some separately fitted cab roof vents that open and close. And you can look, if you look through there, through the the vent there, you can see some wiring. That is for the cab light. That is for the LED in the cab. And we'll take a closer look at that when we get the thing on the layout. All right, now we're going to take a quick look at the front of a tender before we go down the side. You can see the doors here for the coal. Got some grab irons on both sides here. And then you got your deck right here. And then you've got some eligible lettering up here. This one says, black smoke is waste, be careful. And then above that, you've got something talking about the exposed stoker screw if the tender was empty. Going down the side of the tender, you've got a drain right here, and then you've got a completely smooth-sided tender. That's another way you can tell between a J and a K2, is the J's have a smooth side on the tender, and the K2s don't. Then you've got your steps, separately applied grab irons, and that's about it for the side of a tender. All right, looking at the back of the tender now, you've got more separately applied grab irons on each side. Got one here for the step up, two right here, and then you've got your ladder going to the tender deck, two more grabs, and then another one on this side for the steps. You've got some more lettering here, eligible, warning about the exposed stoker screw in the tender, in the coal bunker. Got your LED backup light right here. And then below that, you've got some lettering, and I'll break down what all of this means for you real quick. This right here is the tender number. Standard practice on the Norfolk and Western was to number their tenders separately so they could be swapped out between locomotives as needed. 611 has tender number 220165, which is accurate. That's the one it still has. Below that, it says 35 tons, which means it can hold 35 tons of coal. And then below that, it says 2,000 gallons, meaning they can hold 2,000 gallons of water. Between the 2,000 and the gallons, though, you can see something right there in the middle. That is the class of tender that this is. This is a Class D tender, which is what the J's had. Heading down to the bottom here, we have some steps, another coupler cut bar. You've got your steam heat lines right here, and then, of course, your coupler right there. Looking at the top of the tender, we have our last difference between the early and late versions of the J. The early versions have a more rounded tender deck, and the late version here, as you can see, has a flat, square tender deck. Going up the tender, you've got some die-cast riveting, or molded riveting, molded on water hatch, another ladder, a toolbox, and then you've got your coal bunker. Now, this locomotive has real coal bits on the tender. Personally, I think they use some coal chunks that are a little bit too big. It does look a little jarring, but it's nothing too bad, I would say. Hello, this is Editing Jake, coming at you with a quick little update of stuff that I forgot to include when initially recording the video, and that being some of the specs and features of the Spirit of Roanoke modern excursion version that Scale Trains is offering. We're going to start with what's correct, which is it has a twin beam headlight, green cab curtains, and obviously the Spirit of Roanoke sticker under the cab window. Like I said, those are correct. In the new run that Scale Trains is coming out with later this year, they are doing a 80s and 90s version of the excursion version, which means you have the twin beam headlight and the green cab curtains, but not the Spirit of Roanoke sticker. And now we're going to go over the inaccuracies on the this modern excursion version. One of which being the tandem rods between the third and fourth driver. That's something I forgot to mention when talking about the side rods, was the lack thereof, or the presence of a tandem rod, which is a interesting design choice on MTH's part, but it's kind of cool, I suppose. All 14 J's were built with the tandem side rods, and then later were rebuilt with just a single side rod between the third and fourth driver. That's not a glaring issue with the modern excursion version. What is, to me, a glaring issue with that version is the lack there of coal extenders on the locomotive. Sometime in the 1990s, coal extenders were added to the tender, and neither MTH nor Scale Trains opted to model those. So if you wanted to have a true modern excursion version, you would have to custom make some coal boards for it. Okay, back to the video. Okay, so now that we've got the locomotive and tender out of the way, whew, time to talk about the passenger cars. So I'm not going to be spending as much time on these. I'm going to spend a lot of time on this one. This is the first car. This is the crew car. But a lot of it detail-wise, they're pretty similar with the exception of a couple. And where those are different, I will stop and point them out. Like I said, we're going to take a look at all of them, but in the interest of time, we're going to take an in-depth look only at this one. So you've got your diaphragm up here, door inside the diaphragm, grab irons on either side, stirrup right here, some more grabs, and then you've got your coupler cut bar, coupler, and steam heat lines between the cars right there. Okay, going down the side, you've got Norfolk and Western in very crisp lettering. Got your cab or your windows with glazing in them. You can see some interior details. These cars are all equipped with LED lights for the inside, and the lights look very, very good. We'll when we get on the layout, we'll look at them. You've got your car number right here, and then you've got the train name under the window. It says the Powhatan Arrow. And then you got some lining on the top and bottom of the car. Right here you have some skirting along the side of the car. That is something that is correct on the as-built version of these cars. Scale Trains, as I mentioned earlier, they announced a second run of J's, and they have announced a second run of these passenger cars. Now, the Norfolk Southern versions of these cars that they're doing in the second run, because they're doing N&W and Norfolk Southern, those do not have the skirting that I just pointed out. That is accurate. I'm pretty sure in the late 50s, all of these cars got the skirting removed. Okay, now on the other side of the car, you've got your doors right here, grab irons on either side, and then you've got your diaphragm again. There's not really much detail on the inside of the vestibule. Below that, more grabs, stirrup, air brake lines, and then you got your steam heat and your coupler cut bar. This side of the car, you'll notice, has some different windowing. If you remember on the other side, this one was just sort of a big empty space. Now on this side, there's a bunch of windows on it. That's because this is the crew car. This car is the car that had a crew lounge, lockers for the crew to put their stuff, as well as the conductor's office. Something you'll see on this side of the car as well is this stuff right here, some grilling and some separately applied details along the bottom. This is your air conditioning on these cars. These cars are ordered from Pullman, and they all had air conditioning on board, which was a very big deal in the 1950s. A lot of coaches didn't have that, especially the older heavyweight cars, but these new streamlined cars did have that. Take a quick look at the roof here. You've got some grab irons on both ends, and then you've got a little lip at the end of the car. That is accurate from what I can tell. And yeah, it looks good. These cars, by the way, these cars are some of the smoothest rolling cars ever. Like, you don't even have to touch it, and they just take off. So that's definitely a good thing. Good job, Scale Trains, for that one. All right, next up we have the Class P2 coach. I forgot to mention this on the last car. The last car we looked at, the crew car, the crew coach, was a Class P1, and its road number was 501. This is a Class P2 coach. It's number 511, and it's described on the Scale Trains website as the compartment coach, which essentially what that means is that this car has two different seating areas. If you're at all familiar with U.S. history, you'll know that in the late 1940s and early 1950s, when the Powhatan Arrow was inaugurated, Jim Crow laws were in full swing. And naturally, being a train that ran in the South through Virginia, the train was segregated, unfortunately. And this car represents the coach that was used for the segregated passengers. In terms of details, though, not really much different between this and the last coach, except for the window arrangement. If you look, you can see it's got some different window arrangements. Next up, we have the Class P3 coaches. These are just your standard coaches, standard seating arrangements. The Powhatan Arrow would typically run with 3 of these cars. I have 2, and I have road numbers 537 and 540. The 537 is now at the Roanoke chapter NRHS, a coach that I have been inside and ridden in. And then the 540 is, as far as I'm aware, still at the Western Maryland Scenic. Like I said, the Powhatan Arrow would typically run with 3 of these coaches. I only have 2 right now, so I am 1 car short of a full train, but that'll be fixed in the future, as I have 1 coach from the new run on pre-order. All right, here we have the Class D1 dining car. Now, this one I am going to spend a bit more time talking about because it's got some pretty big differences, I would say, between it and the standard coaches. A lot more grab irons around here. Smaller kitchen door right here. Steps going to that. On the roof, you've got these vents for the ovens and whatnot. And then you've got some windows here. And then on the other end of the coach, which we'll look at in a second, you'll be able to see all the interior detailing with the tables and whatnot. Flipping the car around, you can see on the inside some of the various tables and chairs on the inside. And then you've got sort of a similar window arrangement on this side, actually kind of different window arrangement. You got some bigger windows. Another kitchen door, and some more grabs on the roof here. And that's about it for the diner. Last but certainly not least, we have the observation car. We're starting out by looking at the boring end. You've got more of the same. Vestibule, coupler cut bar, grabs on either side. Stirrup, another grab. Grabs on the roof, just like all the other cars. But what's different on this one is you have this antenna going along the roof. I'm not really sure what that's for, to be completely honest with you. If I had to guess, I would say train phone communication, but I'm not 100% sure. So if somebody knows, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you because there's always more to learn, as far as I'm aware. So if you know what that is, please let me know. Now we're going to flip this car around and look at the more exciting end. All right, there you go. That's more like it. Now we're looking at the more interesting end of the observation car. As you can see, we've got some steps here, grab irons, then you've got separately fitted LED marker lights on both sides of the car. Those do light up and have a red glow out the back, and then green ones out the side. Very, very nice. You've got your door on the rear here, grab iron around the window, and then you've got your drum head right here that is also illuminated by an LED. Now, this particular car, I'm not really sure why it does, but it started flickering. The drum head has started flickering a lot. I need to crack it open and see if I can figure out why it's doing that. But either way, just something to note with this particular car. Grab irons on either side. Then you've got your coupler, cut bar, steam heat, and air brake lines right there. Taking a quick look at the underside of these cars, you can see some brake rigging, various different appliances on the bottom, and the standard coupler boxes. This is the dining car we're looking at the bottom of right now, but this is what all the coaches look like on the underside. I do also have the observation car flipped over right now, so you can see what that looks like. It has a bit of a different arrangement to it, but yeah. So that's looking at all the cars. So let's head over to the layout room now and get this train built and do some laps with it. Alright, we're now in the layout room. Before we can get this thing fired up and we can hear the sounds and watch it run, I do have to go over the myriad of issues I have had with this model, mechanically speaking. Like I said in the intro of the video, I've had to return this model to Scale Trains 3 times for repairs. On 3 separate occasions, I've had to return this model. The first time was a freak accident. The decoder blew. That happens. No big deal. The second time, the drivers got knocked out of quarter. The third time, the drivers were knocked out of quarter again, and the motor was binding. So, that to me is almost an unacceptable thing. I get it. This is their first steam locomotive. First time they've done anything like that. There's going to be some teething problems. But the mere fact I had to send it back twice, and the second time to get the motor replaced, is not something that should ever happen on a model, especially one that cost $500 brand new. And that's the other thing I was going to talk about. The price. The locomotive for DCC and sound comes with a cost of $524. Now, granted, the locomotive is die-cast, and it is chock full of features like a smoke unit and all the lighting features, but if it's going to give me problems like having to send it back 3 times, then that's unacceptable for that price, I just have to say. The coaches cost about $90 each. Really not terrible. The coaches actually are the best part of this to me. I love the coaches. The coaches are the best coaches I own in HO scale. But I do just have to say, for $500, having to send something back on 3 different occasions for repair should be unacceptable. Now, I will give Scale Trains credit where credit is due. They have done right by me. They have repaired it. They have sent it back to me. They have tried to right the issue as much as possible. And I do have to give them credit for that. They have a very good warranty policy, and they haven't charged me a dime to get it fixed. So that is one positive aspect I will say about that. And now we have the other negative aspect. I told you this was going to be a bit of the good and the bad and the ugly situation. And that is the drawbar between the locomotive and tender. Now, this issue originates from the MTH days. Like I said, this is the MTH tooling of the Norfolk and Western J class. But the way Scale Trains implemented the drawbar on this model, it is essentially causing some horrible sound cutting out with the tender speakers. You have speakers in the locomotive and you have speakers in the tender. The locomotive has its own decoder, and so does the tender. Why this was a design choice they went with, I couldn't tell you, but that has caused issues with the sound cutting out in the tender. Now, if you hook the tender together properly, and keep the connections clean, you can mitigate the sound cutting out in the tender issue. That can be mitigated. But again, on a $500 model, you shouldn't have to hold your tongue every single time you put the thing together. Especially with your advertised point of that drawbar system being you don't have to deal with the little wires between the engine and tender. But that's not the only problem with the drawbar. The other problem with the drawbar is if you get it set in there correctly where the sound doesn't cut out, it lifts some of the weight off the driving wheels, dramatically affecting your pulling power on the locomotive. This thing struggles with a 10-car train And for something that is a model of the most powerful 484 ever built and weighs a metric ton because it's die-cast, that should not be an issue, especially with traction tires fitted. But that is going to be the end of my little rant session about the quality control on this model. Scale trains, I understand you had some teething problems with it, and they have learned from their mistakes. On the new run of J's that are coming out this fall, they have a completely redesigned drawbar. So the tender sound cutting out should not be an issue. They'll have a good production example on what to do with these models. And hopefully the second run will be good. And like I said, ScaleTrain's customer service has been very good to me. They have treated me well. I can't say anything bad about that. All right, one more thing before we get going, and this is more of a personal preference. This is not anything against the quality of this locomotive. It is just something that I'm going to say before we get into it. I will not be demonstrating the smoke unit in this video. I mentioned that the model comes equipped with the smoke unit. I will not be using it for a couple of reasons. One, in my experience, smoke unit is the first point of failure on an HO scale steam locomotive. In my experience with BLI, they've caused more problems than they're worth, and I end up just not using them anyway. I'm not saying that's the case with this. I have not heard people having any issues with the smoke unit on these models. If you want to use a smoke unit on your ScaleTrains J, go right ahead. Use it all you want. If you look at my original video on this that I did last year, you'll see I'm running the smoke unit in that video. It looks very good. It looks better than most HO smoke units. I still don't think it looks particularly realistic, but it looks pretty good. The other reason I'm not going to be using it in this video, aside from personal preference, the other one is because of the layout room here at the clubhouse. It's not exactly the most well ventilated, and if you leave the thing on for too long, it will smoke you out of this room. So I'm just not going to be using the smoke unit. I'm sorry if someone was really looking forward to seeing that in action. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it in this video. If you want to see it in action, you can go check out my video from last year, or you can go find another video on YouTube. I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there where you can see the smoke unit working. Okay, so let's listen to some sounds now. I'm going to go over the entire function list, all 25 or so functions that are listed in the manual. One thing I will mention is that this model is equipped with ESU Loc Sound 5, and the people from ESU did go out to Goshen, Virginia in 2023 to get some actual audio samples of the 611 for use on this model. If you have another model of the 611 equipped with Loc Sound 5, you can download this sound file from their website. That's a big selling point. A lot of the other models available on the market do not have sounds recorded from the 611. This one does. So let's go ahead and get into that. I'm going to start off with F8. As with any ESU-equipped locomotive, that's your startup sound. And you hear the steam hissing, kicking in there. Going to go ahead and hit F0, which is, per the standard, your headlight. Hear the Dynamo World life there. Got very, very nice glow from the headlight, golden-looking headlight. And you can see those number boards have lit up. Later on, we'll dim the lights in here, so you can see all the lighting features in the dark. And we'll also show you the tail on the observation car. F1 is the bell. That's definitely 611's bell. F2, as for any locomotive, it is your whistle. Now, this is something that ESU did a little strange. Like I mentioned, they went out and got actual audio recording of the 611 for a lot of the sounds on here. But for some reason, 611's whistle wasn't included. I believe this whistle that is on here is from the Boone Valley Scenics Q or SY Mikado, the Chinese Mikado. It's the right type of whistle. It's a Hancock 3, but it's definitely not 611's whistle. Something to keep in mind. The great part with ESU is you can upload you can make a custom whistle. I'm working on that right now. But yeah, this is the stock whistle from the factory. That's your whistle. F3 is smoke unit. Like I said, I'm not going to be running that. F4 is coast mode, which means that if you're going down a hill or something, you won't hear the chuffing. You'll just hear rod clanking. F5 is your classification lights. So if you hit F5, there goes the safety valve. Wait for that to stop. Alright, so if you hit F5 once, they'll light up white, signifying an extra train, which is just a train that's not shown on any timetable. Hit F5 again, lights go out. Hit F5 a third time, they'll light up green, which signifies a timetable scheduled train with one or more following sections. That's straight from the ESU manual there, folks. That's how they write it, and they're correct. F6 is your cab light, which you might be able to see, kind of see it here. Like I said, we'll show that off under the, we'll turn off all the lights in here and show you all the different lighting features in a little bit. F7 is your water fill sound. As mentioned previously, F8 is your startup shutdown. F9 is heavy load mode, so even if you're going up a hill, you can put that on and it kicks in some extra power. It's like putting the reverser forward a little bit. F10 is your independent brake. F11 is your grade crossing sequence. Okay, let's see here. F13 is your coupler clank, so sound of coupling up to something. Pretty standard ESU sound there. F14 is your safety valve again. What are we on? F14 is air pumps at variable speed. Maybe do it when the air pump isn't already going off. Try that again. F14, air pump, variable speed. F15, air pump, slow. F16 is your injector. F17 is automatic brake set and release, so no sounds affiliated with that. 18 is your ash dump. Sound of shaking the grates there. 19 is boiler blowdown. '20 is safety valve. I'm not playing that again. It's loud enough. 21 is curve squeal. 22, rod clank off. So if you don't want to hear the rods clanking, you can hit F22. 23 is headlight, oil headlight, so it just is the headlight turning on with no dynamo sound. 24 is Stoker. And then 25 is your Sander. Uh, 26, 27, and 28 are all empty. I don't have a controller that can get the function 29, but that is listed as being a sound fader. So I don't really know what that does. I'm assuming it fades the sound out, but I don't know. If somebody is able to access F29, please let me know what it does in the comments. Turn the lights out in the room. Now we can take a look at some of the other light functions. So turning F5 on, you can really see the extra light right there, the white light. And then there's your green. F6, and now we'll turn F6 on. Yeah, you can see the cab light up right there. Really cool. I really like the lighting features on this model. I know we sort of started with a bit of a downer setup with it, but and before we fired it up, but I do really like the lighting features. I think they did a good job with that. Quick look at the observation car lights here. You can see the illuminated markers as well as the illuminated drumhead. Looks really, really good. Alright, well, last thing to do is to get a running session in. So I'm going to turn it over to the Norfolk and Western, number 611. Clear to depart the station, heading eastbound. Alrighty, folks. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video today and leave you with my final thoughts. Not really sure where to start, but I guess we'll start here. The model, this is an incredible model. It's a very good model. It's got good weight. It's got good features, mechanically speaking, for the most part. You know, your mechanism is really good. It's a powerful motor. It's the whole 9 yards. DCC sound, all that. But that drawbar, lifting a lot of the weight off the drivers, is a massive issue. Not to mention the cutting out of the speakers in the tender, another problem that can be attributed to the drawbar. And the fact I've had to return this 3 times for repairs being another thing to consider. That really does bring the score of the model down, because I was expecting this to be like a 9 out of 10. You know, I don't like to give 10 out of 10s. I don't think giving 10 out of 10 is a productive thing. But this was, I was hoping to be a 9 out of 10. With all that, it does bring it down to, I would say, a 7. And the reason I say a 7 is because I do really like this model. It looks and sounds incredible. And if I could just get a proper whistle on there, and when I do get 611's actual whistle on there, it'll be the perfect 611 model for me, in my opinion. But those issues really did drag it down, and it cost it, you know? I should be more harsh on it for that, to be completely honest. It should get a lower score than a 7 out of 10. But, nonetheless, I think I do have a bit of a emotional bias in there that sort of brings it up a little bit. The coaches, on the other hand, I'm going to talk about the coaches separately. The coaches are absolutely phenomenal. I'd give those a straight 9 out of 10 pretty easily. They roll incredibly. The lights work awesomely. They don't flicker on and off. They don't do anything. They don't do any of the stuff that I've experienced from a lot of other cars with lights in them. So I'll give the coaches a 9 out of 10. However, and I will leave it on a bit of a, I know I was a bit harsh there in the middle, going over the issues I've had with it. I will go ahead and before we leave say that Scale Trains listened to the criticism. They saw the problems. They heard what people were saying, and they are fixing it. Earlier this year, they announced a new run of J classes with a completely redesigned drawbar. Now, unfortunately, with me being a student and all, I can't really afford to drop another $500 on another one to see how it goes or how the improvements go. But if I get a chance to get a hold of one and take a look at it, I'll try to make a quick video on it and maybe update you and show you how the new drawbar system works. But that's all coming down the road. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoy, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you. Have a great day.